pre-warning for this video, there are a ton of spoilers. Here they are. If you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch this video. There's something about hallways that has always felt foreboding to me. The claustrophobia these long spaces create has never exactly sat well with me. Moving through these prolonged pieces of our world has always led me to feeling some sense of existential terror. This thought pattern has of course been heightened by the recent popularity of liminal spaces across the internet, but before these were ever even popular, hallways remained a small subsection of architecture that continuously creeped me out and still does to this day. One memory I have that has really stuck with me when thinking about this phenomenon is back during parents' evening in school, when the once densely populated hallways suddenly became a barren, undisturbing, unswerving playground to mess around in. Despite using these areas for fun, you can never quite shake off that underlying feeling of dread that something, or someone, was lurking in that hallway with you. And thanks to the lesser known TV show Severance, I've begun to get infatuated with hallways much more than I probably should. Severance is a show that subverts all the contemporary norms of modern TV standards, with more and more shows opting for a grand, unimaginable set piece that leaves an audience jaw-dropped. Severance's world is a stark contrast to that. A vast majority of the show takes place in a paradoxically linear set of corridors that are impossible to separate. Everywhere on the severed floor is just another part of the seemingly endless void of luminescent lighting and striking white architecture that makes you feel trapped in a retro-futuristic prison. The lack of any personality on this floor riddles you with this unique anxiety because you never know where you are, regardless of if the story indicates it or not. Severance does a masterful job at making you feel compassionate for its main cast because you truly don't understand what exactly they're doing here. Each hallway serves as just another moment of mesmerizing horror. I love how they give Lumen, the company these characters work for, a real sense of mystique and tension while simultaneously giving us no indication as to what their real motives are. And the way they play with cinematography in this show also helps these hallways feel even more traumatizing and confusing. Much of what we see on the severed floor and in the Lumen building is shot in these really abstract, static ways that add even more to the real lack of humanity we witness throughout the show. These shots that constantly toy with the sizing of the cast filled me with so much anxiety during the show, which ironically matches how the numbers feel to the refiners.
The numbers were scary.
But at certain times in the story, mostly during moments of tension, the camera goes from this robotic, almost lifeless mode to a typical shaky cam that makes these built-up moments of tension feel that much more impactful. One of the main inspirations behind Severance was Office, a book by Lars Thunbjörg, which contained a variety of images that now over 20 years later after it was published, feels like the first stepping stone into making liminal spaces what they are today. But this wasn't the only inspiration for Severance, as there's something much more recognisable that feels scarily related to it.
This is the story of a man named Stanley.
The Stanley Parable is not a horror game. In fact, it's hard to even put it into a genre. This game has been extensively regarded as one of the best of its kind, and even though it's taken me over 10 years to try it, I can confidently say that it's a master in its linear field. It made me laugh over its witty and timeless commentary spoken by the narrator. It's blown my mind through the sheer amount of detail hidden within its world, but most importantly, it also does a perfect job at making hallways feel so fucking daunting. Like Severance, the Stanley Parable is an isolating experience. It makes you feel trapped in an irony-filled maze of questions and paradoxes that play with your head in ways I've not experienced before in any other game out there. Its liminal atmosphere pairs flawlessly with its near-silent presentation. Walking through these hallways is a bleak and worryingly hushed experience that never gives you all the answers you're looking for. You're constantly left questioning why you find so much comforting anxiety by travelling through this musty and seemingly normal office space. Despite these hallways having much more personality than those in Severance, it never quite shakes off that feeling of dread and separation you have. Being stuck in these corridors for a majority of the playtime leads to areas with larger scales to constantly trick you into understanding the real size of these rooms. Most of these larger sections are used for gags, which sometimes can make them feel much more foreboding than they really are. As I said before, the Stanley Parable is not a scary game at all. Its entire purpose is to be a comedically thought-provoking walking simulator. but the constant fourth wall breaks and seemingly infinite endings from these straightforward paths fills me with a much more disturbing sense of dread than I can fully seem to shake off. It makes me question reality the same way that hallway fight in Inception does. It makes me feel both smart and stupid for understanding so much of what this game has to say. There's a reason so many people adore the shit out of this experience, and the way I did is no different. What this game ultimately showcases through its environments is the corporate greed that invades so much of the world today. It's a commentary on so many real-world issues that uses its obtuse world design to only add to the points it makes to Stanley. And all these points don't even scratch the surface of it. The Ultra Deluxe version adds even more captivating content to this story, and I strongly recommend you go through and explore all the endings for yourself, as I reckon you'll be just as absorbed into its world as I am. The Stanley Parable also clearly went on to inspire other games like Superliminal, which doesn't entirely make hallways seem menacing, but it's still a game that explores how a once cozy atmosphere can turn into something greater. Its puzzles are constantly mind-bending and dreamlike, constantly leaving you second-guessing if what you did was even the solution the developers intended, and the places you explore in this game are much more vibrant than its inspiration, which doesn't lend itself to being spoken about as a scary game whatsoever. But the Stanley Parable was very evidently inspired by a different game that, just like these three, manages to use comedy to lighten what is realistically a derelict void of hope. Portal 2 is one of my favourite games of all time. I could talk for hours about its incredible storyline, intricate lore, or its revolutionary mechanics for the time, but my favourite aspect of this game has always been its visual identity. The clinically deceased test chambers of the Aperture Science facility have remained a favourite of mine since my first playthrough. The deconstructed remains of a once powerful company serves to make Portal 2 feel like you're descending through a cataclysmic wasteland that you don't belong in. This game plays with space in a very back and forth way that lets the player explore very open areas while still being mostly confined to direct pathways that guide you through the near endless facility. It uses its dystopian environments to make these small areas feel subtly haunting to the player, whether they can see that or not. Because if this game didn't have so much comedic value to it, I don't think it would be a stretch to say that it would feel slightly terrifying to venture through. That isolation you feel walking through a hallway is captured marvellously throughout all of Portal 2, regardless of how large the room you're in is. I love the way it uses these metallic bridges between sections to make you feel more trapped than you already are. I'm unsure how much purpose this decision had, but replaying the game for another time has solidified my appreciation for these sections. The game also has a hidden obsession with these linear moments. The light bridges give you little room to work with as you solve puzzles, the excursion funnels hold you in its grasp and transport you across certain chambers, and the aerial faith plates that launch you directly to whatever they're aiming towards emblems that back and forth game design I mentioned previously. This game doesn't leave you much room to fully explore the facility, adding to that mystery behind what went on here all those years ago. And I think this design choice was perfect for the game, as it constantly leaves you with this lingering feeling of uncertainty as to what's around every corner. These unkempt environments make you wish you could just escape this place as soon as possible, and this feeling tied with the mostly ambient soundtrack makes you feel completely alone in this world. You don't feel comforted by what's around you here, you feel like you're constantly descending an impotent dust bowl of mechanisms and broken technology, making it one of those games that will stick with you for a long time. But what else makes Portal 2 feel so threatening is how grounded in realism its world is. It may feel completely impossible to recreate in our current era, but it isn't that far off being reality, which is what makes certain movie scenes in impotent hallways feel extra meaningful too. I'm of course talking about a very specific scene in a film I recently was recommended, and a film I'm still slightly traumatized by after watching. 2003's Korean classic, Oldboy. Oldboy is a traumatizing masterpiece. Being the first Korean film to garner widespread attention in the US, its influence on modern cinema is quite hard to ignore. But what it's most known for isn't its clustered editing style or haunting twist at the end, but this scene. For a whopping 2 minutes and 40 seconds, The protagonist Odesu brawls his way through an onslaught of henchmen in one continuous take that has redefined cinematic fight scenes. There are many aspects to the scene that go a long way in forwarding its impact to the viewer. The close corner fray being shot in a single take effortlessly conveys the overall desperation and imbalance this fight has. Everything about this battle feels messy and clunky, which works to its benefit of grounding it deeper in realism than many of the action scenes we see today. Another reason this scene sticks out to me is through the lens we see it from. The way in which these characters move through the claustrophobic hallway leaves it feeling like it goes on forever, and you begin to lose track of where you are in the environment. You have a very linear and unnatural perspective of this fight, feeling like you're playing a 2D side-scroller rather than witnessing a movie. And the claustrophobia only adds to the disorder of the fight, with little space for all of these henchmen to launch an attack together, giving Odesu an opportunity to outmatch them all with just a single hammer in his hand. This scene was a direct inspiration for another one of my favourite movie scenes of all time, being the equally chaotic yet more fantastical fight in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is much less gritty and more just straight up fun. And honestly, I can see traces of Oldboy in many other films today. 2013 Snowpiercer is a great example of this. It's a story about hope and overcoming hierarchical disparities, yet it's told in both a deep psychological sense and a blunt approach on the surface that at first can seem pretty boring. But using the long direct carriageways of a train as a way to symbolise the class divide in society is a smart approach that only someone like Bong Joon-ho could pull off. And not to mention that night vision fight scene, holy shit. However, I think Parasite's use of this linear physical structure is the best we've seen in the modern film age. This film, wow. There's just so much I wish I could say about it that I just can't, because I truly believe this will go down in history as one of the best films ever made. The first half of this film uses space in the most abstract ways possible to showcase its depiction of class. Its vast use of static shots similar to that of Severance help give each character their own scale in this environment. The house much of the movie takes place in uses its openness to portray the richer family's sense of power and freedom, which is what makes the twist roughly halfway into the film that much more special. The transition from a gorgeous albeit messy basement area into a dark and foreboding brutalist cave beneath the home is elevated by its immediate sense of contrast. These two places share a geographical home, yet they both feel like polar opposites. This frowsy, tenebrous hallway devoid of light and capacity gives the viewer a pressuring amount of time to question what's at the end of this descent. And it's the reveal and subsequent hellscape all the characters are suddenly left in after the reveal that makes this brutalist grotto arguably the most alluring set piece of the entire film. Whilst all of these examples are just a handful that I feel I needed to speak about, there's so many more I either don't know about or have merely forgotten. The use of linear space in all varieties of media is a deceivingly difficult thing to portray effectively to a viewer or a player. There's so many ways in which these concourses can be captured, despite their distinct simplicity. It takes so much yet so little to fully engross someone into this arrangement of walls, which is what gives me that elevated curiosity about them. To anybody out there watching this video, I encourage you to discuss a version of this that you personally have a connection with. It could be from a movie, a game, or a real life event. It sounds stupid, but tell me about a hallway experience you can remember. I think there's so much to take away from these places that seemingly go over most people's heads. Just be careful to not lose your own along the way. This was a lot more fun to make than the initial idea seemed. It's a lot shorter video than I've done recently, but I want to try and see if shorter videos are the way to go in the future. It's also a very abstract decision to make a video about always. It purely just comes from watching Severance, which is just literally the best show I've ever seen. And then I immediately played the Stanley Parable after it, and they both were like, yeah, like I need to make a video about hallways. Obviously the script isn't as like, you know, all over the place. Well, it is all over the place, but as in like, I definitely kept it a bit more focused, a bit more grounded. I didn't want to delve too deep into any specific topic. I just wanted to talk about cool ways and why I think they're cool, and some of the ways in which they've been made to be cool. Yeah, that's all I really have to say. Thank you all for watching. Thank you Tesco Meal Deal once again for being a member. Take care everyone, and peace.